Forget everything you think you know about Germany's economic miracle. Seriously, throw it out. The popular narrative, it's a complete myth. Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into the hard data to aggressively uncover the actual truth behind Europe's ultimate success story. And trust me, it's going to blow your mind. Let's pit the globally accepted myth right up against the brutal, face-slapping reality. The whole world believes that brilliant government policies and the euro swooped in and saved Germany. But the data? It tells a completely different story. Politicians didn't save this economy. The workers did. And they paid the ultimate price by literally bleeding their own wages. Okay, let's rewind for a second. Picture this. It's 2005 and Germany is absolutely suffocating. The unemployment rate had just hit a terrifying 11.1%. I mean, the world was actively mocking them. They actually earned the shameful title, the sick man of Europe. We're talking complete, devastating economic stagnation. But then look at this. By 2010, that unemployment rate magically crashed down to 7.7%. It was a recovery that genuinely shocked the world. Exports absolutely exploded, and Germany became this global economic superstar almost overnight. So what happened? How did they actually pull this off? Well, that brings us to part one. Workers paid the price. The dark truth. Let's break down the brutal, localized survival tactics these companies used. Step 1. Threaten bankruptcy or threaten to relocate the factory entirely. Step 2. Invoke what they called opening clauses. Basically, sneaky legal loopholes to ignore minimum wage standards. Step 3. Just bypass those powerful union contracts altogether. And step 4. Slash worker pay. It was survival, literally at any cost. Now, what's really wild about this slide is that crashing solid line right at the bottom. This isn't just abstract data. We're talking about real people's livelihoods. The research definitively proves that the poorest workers took massive, devastating pay cuts. The bottom 15% literally watched their paychecks collapse. Look at how wage inequality just exploded outside of union protection. Mass deunionization completely destroyed any sense of wage equality. Millions of workers were suddenly stripped of their protections, totally exposed to the brutal, unforgiving reality of the free market. The most vulnerable people were just left entirely behind. Here is the raw truth. German workers sacrificed their own livelihoods so that German exports could conquer the world. That is the massive hidden human cost of this global dominance. It wasn't some miracle of efficiency. It was pure, painful sacrifice. Moving on to part 2, the secret supply chain and how they slashed costs even further. So, big manufacturing plants realized they couldn't do everything themselves anymore. To squeeze out extra margins, they started relying heavily on cheap external inputs. The data here shows a massive jump from about 66% of the output value in 1995 to nearly 73% in 2007. Basically, they furiously outsourced the work just to keep their heads above water. And here is another massive myth totally busted by the data. Everyone just assumes they used cheap foreign labor, right? Wrong. A staggering 70% of those inputs were strictly domestic. It was the local service workers, right inside Germany, who were truly subsidizing this whole export boom. This brilliantly illustrates the divide. Manufacturing wages, they saw modest growth, but service wages saw a crushing, brutal decline. The people sweeping the floors and running logistics outside those shiny export factories were the ones secretly absorbing the financial blow. They were the invisible backbone of the entire miracle. Which leads us to part 3, the threat from the East. Pure survival. You might be wondering, why on earth did workers accept this? Well, German unions were in absolute panic mode. The Iron Curtain had just fallen. The country took on a staggering €900 billion debt for reunification. And suddenly, this hyper-cheap, highly skilled labor market pops up right next door in Poland and Hungary. The ultimatum to workers was chilling, accept lower pay, or we pack up this factory and leave. And man, that fear worked. By 2004, a staggering 60% of manufacturing contracts were using those sneaky opening clauses to just crush wage standards. 60%. That is up from less than 5% a decade earlier. The workers basically had to surrender just to save their jobs. All right, part 4, debunking the policy myth. Let's look at the political lie. Let's see how this builds, because this timeline definitively destroys the popular political narrative. Look here. The massive wage sacrifices started way back in the mid-1990s. The euro, that didn't even arrive until 1999. And those famous Hartz labor reforms politicians brag about, not until 2003. The miracle actually started a full decade before the politicians lifted a single finger. Politicians shamelessly took the credit, but the data clearly shows they were incredibly late to the party. The literal financial bleeding and the saving of the economy had already been done by the working class, years before a single government reform was actually passed. So why didn't places like France or Italy pull this off? Because they literally couldn't. Germany had these flexible local works councils that quietly bent the rules factory by factory. France and Italy, they have super rigid nationally mandated labor laws. Trying this over there would require massive government overhauls and it'd instantly trigger paralyzing nationwide strikes. Finally, part 5, the hidden cost of success. Let's look at the final balance sheet. The absolutely crucial point to take away from this explainer is that this was definitely not some frictionless, magical victory. It fundamentally broke the German wage structure. Real wages for the poorest folks plunged. Inequality surged massively. And industry-wide protections basically died. They literally sacrificed equality to win the global export game. As the researchers themselves point out, this ruthless efficiency sparked an intense debate about poverty and social justice. The data serves as a really stark reality check. Achieving that shiny economic superstar status came with an incredibly heavy, painful human price tag. When you strip away all the academic gloss, the truth really stings. Germany's famous superstar economy wasn't built on political genius or magical government policies. It was built squarely on the broken backs and the financial sacrifice of its absolute poorest workers. Today, other nations are absolutely desperate to copy Germany's economic miracle. But looking at the data, here is the chilling question you really have to ask. Are their citizens actually willing to bleed for it? Think about that the next time you hear a politician taking credit for an economic boom. Thanks for joining me on this